And last but certainly not least, let's talk the main event of UFC 265. We have Cyril Gane versus Derek Lewis. There's going to be some firepower going off here. Who do you think ends up victorious?
Yeah, I mean, it's just hard to, even though he's only had a couple of fights, it's hard to bet against Gunn. He just looks like he's so polished. Um, I I hope I'm wrong, but I have a suspicion this may not be the most exciting fight for the fans.
Yeah,
Um, Gunn in his last fight was his first like sort of big fight with some spotlight. Definitely was a little gun shy, and yeah, my hope is that we can just get an exciting fight with some good exchanges. But I really think Gunn's gonna the line shows it for a reason. He's minus 350. I
which
think.
is crazy.
Yeah,
Almost disrespectful to Derek Lewis.
yeah. I mean, Derek Lewis has so many
He's
wins,
knocked a
so many
lot of
knockouts.
guys out recently.
Yeah, I mean, from rewatching the Blades fight, Lewis, he's just he's just not as like light in his feet. He doesn't move around, doesn't mix it up.
He's a heavyweight. Yeah.
He's a heavyweight as it would be described, like maybe from like years ago. From that Blades fight, he was just Blades looked so much like more fluid. Lewis just didn't have a lot of combinations, and I mean that's been Derek Lewis's mo for a while. He can put your lights out with one shot.
One
So
shot can end the whole night. Yeah.
yeah, what are you seeing here? You see anything different?
Yeah, I actually learned this week that Cyril Gane has been training MMA for 3 years. Did you know that?
Yeah,
3 years? You
yeah,
you talk about guys doing this for a lifetime and can barely crack into the rankings. I mean, that's really incredible, and I think it speaks to his potential. Totally agree that this could be a boring fight, and looking at Gane's kind of last handful of fights, as he's climbed up the rankings a bit, you see going to more decisions. Um, and again, that's not kind of what you expect to see from heavyweights. You want to see big shots flying around. You want to see what you saw from kind of Greg Hardy and Tai Tuivasa, standing right in the middle, exchanging blows. But I don't expect that to happen. I know you kind of talked about the line there and how Gane is a heavy favorite, but kind of playing devil's advocate here. I mean, seeing how Derek Lewis wins fights and that one-shot power, Gon could be a heavy favorite, but that doesn't guarantee he's going to win by any means. I mean, one flush land and the fight can be over. And especially when you're getting used to going to decisions and later into the rounds like Gon is, longer and more chances you give someone like Derek Lewis, the more opportunity he has to make you pay for it. So I can see it going either way. Obviously, Vegas does not, but I think in theory there's some excitement, but I also think, like you said, there's a great chance they get in there and respect each other's power and keep some distance, and there's just not fireworks going off.
yeah, yeah. And I just you see it with his win over Volkov. Blades, I had Blades winning that fight. His last fight, um, he still pulls it out. He finds a home for that right hand, whether it's an
Yeah,
overhand or an uppercut. Um, I don't think Gane's going to shoot to give him that opening for the uppercut, and I think Gane's footwork, and he's very long with his punches. He doesn't really loop them the way that Derek does. He's very like much straight punches. I think he's going to just keep him at bay, and my hope is that he's able to at least land something substantial and give the crowd a show when they get into a big exchange. But I
this
can really
isn't
see,
Houston.
yeah,
We have Derek Lewis's hometown. I mean, if he could pick a time to march forward and shut in this fight early, this is the fight to do it. That place is going to be rocking when he walks out of the tunnel. He is a
yeah,
legend there. He is a fan favorite, and he gets everybody excited.
yeah. My hope is that Gunn is such a hot prospect that we have seen Lewis kind of, I don't want to say give up, but when he fought Cormier, Cormier, in my opinion, is top three pound for pound of all time. It seemed like Lewis just knew he was outgunned and just didn't exactly put up the strongest fight.
Yeah.
So my hope is that, yeah, he feeds off the home crowd energy and just is able to make it a messy fight. I think that's what he needs. I don't think he's going to be taking Gane down. I don't think Gane's going to be taking him down, but
No.
we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, I think Derek Lewis would be the first one to admit that he doesn't want to fight for 5 full rounds too. But I think he's mentioned a few times that cardio isn't exactly his best friend. Um, But I think this all stems into what's next and what is next for the winner of this fight. And I don't think that's a mystery. I think they face the final boss of the division, Francis Ngannou himself. And I think that's what we need to discuss. I mean, I personally, I'll jump into here, and I don't want to give Francis too much credit, but I don't think either of these guys stand a chance. I know that we already saw Lewis versus Ngannou part one. I know it was an absolute stinker, and I don't think that could happen again. In a sense, if they did fight, there would just be firepower and fireworks. I think they both learned a lesson, many lessons from that fight, but one of them is to never let something get that ugly. And I know Gane and Ngannou have been training partners for some time now. And I've heard that it's been somewhat competitive, but I would also imagine that Francis would have to hold back on his power during training, or else there would be no training partners left. And as we were mentioning, I mean, if Gane's going through 5 rounds and winning fights that way, you do not last 5 rounds with Francis Ngannou. I mean, Stipe is his first opponent in like 5, 6 fights now to get to the second round. That's Stipe Miocic we're talking about, an
Yeah.
absolute legend in the heavyweight division. I'm not saying that if Ngannou and Gane were the next to fight that it wouldn't get out of the first round, but I don't think that he lasts all too long. I think Francis wins that decisively and with a nice, powerful finish as always. What do you think, though?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm the UFC right now, I'm a little, I don't want to say concerned, but you have a guy in Gane, like you said. I've heard that as well, that it was competitive when they trained as training partners. I mean, if Derek Lewis can pull off like a huge knockout, I think you could definitely resell that fight. I think everyone, I think the casuals probably don't even know that the first fight happened, and the hardcores could probably see that. If Lewis is able to knock Gane out, that he's improved and he's bringing more aggression, and Ngannou looks like a completely different fighter his last few fights.
Which he
Like everyone,
totally does, yeah.
yeah. I mean, the way he stuffed that takedown with Miocic, his adding kicks to the repertoire against Stipe, it's just you can tell he's evolved a lot and he's as scary as ever. So um, that I think is what Dana White is hoping for. I think he needs a big knockout, and because even with Cyril Gane, it's like the guy only has 9 fights professionally.
Yeah. It's
So
amazing
that's
he's in this position.
if, and I think if he shows some amazing footwork and some amazing striking, and he's like this dynamic prospect who's absolutely shredded, and the young gun. I mean, Ngannou's been around for a while now, and Ngannou's not exactly the young gun. He's fought in the UFC a bunch of times, and I think you could probably sell that. But if you get sort of like a stinker of a fight here, I'm not sure what you do if you're Dana White.
That's going to be a tough
Yeah,
promotion. Really tough, like you're mentioning.
yeah. I mean, if you're if you're Dana White, I think you're really hurting for some prospects. I think at this point
Yeah.
the heavyweight division has all kind of canceled each other out in terms of winning streaks and prospects, except for Gane, really.
Yep.
So yeah, if this fight is a stinker, then I think they might have to get creative. They might have to, maybe entice Jan to move up and have a super fight, something like that. It'll give the heavyweight division some
Jan
time to,
Blachowicz, yeah. Yep.
yeah, give the division some time to figure itself out and sort itself out, get a new crop of prospects, because otherwise, yeah, I'm not sure who else would be the guy. What do you
So
think?
you said something interesting there that I think would be a good discussion point of Ngannou has been around a bit now. I want to say he's 33. And I know heavyweights fight a little longer. I think kind of Stipe and DC are around 40. Both of them, I know DC's retired, but again, he was fighting into an older age there. So part of its age, and part of its miles. And Ngannou is not exactly getting miles. He's not getting a whole lot of time in the cage. He's not taking many shots. So I would be curious to get your thoughts on, how long could he last? Maybe the answer is how long is ever long as he wants to, but it is an interesting thing to think about.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they just keep feeding him guys who just maybe don't deserve to be there, and they can just
Yeah.
build him up to be their Mike Tyson. I think he just has all the potential to be their biggest star by far, and it is very weird to see them sort of this is for the interim title, right? Is this?
This is yep, 265 is, and then
Yeah,
it's everyone's assumption that they're going to be unifying those belts after.
yeah. To me, that's a little alarming that so quickly after fighting Stipe Miocic, they're like going to strip his title.
So they didn't say they were going to strip it. From what I heard, is they offered Francis a handful of dates, and he said I will be ready for September, and they said no, we need a fight by August, and this is what's happening here. But the role of these belts, and the interim belt specifically, is usually if a guy's injured, and we don't. There was never an explanation of here's why it's getting introduced here. Now, I mean, I see both ends of Francis felt very disrespected of like I just got this belt, why are you just issuing another one? But I think long term, when they go to have the next fight, it's going to make it that much bigger. It's unifying two belts when maybe it shouldn't be. But there's a couple angles you can look at it from.
Yeah. Who knows what those conversations looked like? But if I'm Dana White, at least what I see in Ngannou is just someone who, there's going to be movies about him. There's going to
Yeah.
be, the guy's story is just incredible. He looks the part. I mean, he's built like a Greek god,
Yeah.
and he just knocks people to the moon. He has the Tyson effect to a point that I haven't really seen in the UFC, maybe
No,
ever.
I don't think
I,
ever. I
yeah,
really don't.
and I really think that the UFC is making a big push to like move into Africa as well. Like this could just be like their guy for many years, the face of the organization. So if I'm Dana White, I want to I want to do right by him, and
Yeah, it's a
yeah,
strange move there.
but they need to be able to keep feeding him good fights. I'd be curious to see like how well a Ngannou versus like Gane or Ngannou Lewis 2 would do in terms of pay-per-view buys.
Yeah,
Like,
I
I
don't
think
imagine Lewis two, Ngannou Lewis two. That's like touching on both ends of it. Of like it's Ngannou, everyone wants to see that knockout, but as we mentioned, you have that previous stinker, which is that going to leave a sour taste, or people just going to avoid it for that reason? I think that's very possible, and even if the answer is somewhere in the middle, that doesn't make it an awesome selling card. What do you think?
yeah, yeah. I think that's what we need to see. I think that will really dictate. Like I know I'm biased, as I just said. I think he could be their guy, but if if the
Totally agree
bias
too.
if the bias don't show up, then I think that they do need a new strategy for the division, and I think they need him to probably fight a lot and hope that he just
Yeah,
keeps knocking people off,
staying
so they can
active.
just build that montage, build that like winning streak, build that Tyson effect. Because if he, yeah, maybe even to Dana's point, like if he doesn't fight for many months, and then his first big fight as the champion, it's a dud in terms of buys. That could not be good for them. Um,
So, two names to kind of throw into the mix here. One that shouldn't be too surprising that everyone's forgotten about is Stipe Miocic. He has come out and said that he wants part three. He shouldn't have to wait. And he was written off fairly quickly after the last fight. I mean, there's science behind waiting a bit after a knockout, and seeing a knockout like that, I wouldn't, mind him taking his time like the other fans. But what would you make of that part three fight?
yeah, I mean, I think if anyone deserves it, it's him.
Yeah.
I want to see him get knocked out badly again by the most dangerous guy in the UFC? No, I grew up watching Stipe, and
And is that what you
uh,
think would happen too?
yeah, I don't see that going a different way. And Ngannou really, unless he just like hasn't been training at all since he became the champion, Ngannou just looks so dominant in every aspect there. I don't see that going. And Miocic is just, yeah, he's a lot older now than he was the first time they fought.
I
And
mean, you saw Francis's evolution through part two in that fight. I mean, it was so clear. Not to spend too much time talking about it, but I mean, when you looked at that fight, you say, how does Francis win? It's by knockout. How does Stipe win? It's by grinding him out, taking him down the way he did the first time. And when Stipe shot and Francis basically reversed the position as he landed these bombs on Stipe, I mean, I think that's when the audience knew it was over. Not literally, but you knew that Stipe is not going to be able to do anything to finish this fight. And that's exactly what led to him saying, okay, I have to stand and trade with this guy. And I don't think anyone in the world is going to win that battle. And
yeah,
that's where we ended up. So part three, I mean, what do you say? Stipe did say he wants to gain some weight, and that could help with the takedowns, but seeing the patience out of Francis and everything that made him so incredible in that performance is not going to change. He's not going to throw it out the window if he has to fight him again.
Yeah, I mean, if Stipe comes in, 15, 20 pounds heavier, I think his losing of the weight against Cormier worked quite well.
Yep.
But yeah, I I don't know if it's going to be enough. Like he needs to win that fight with wrestling. It became abundantly clear.
Yep.
Francis ate a pretty good right. I think it was a right hand from him, and just answered back with missiles.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think you can win that fight with striking. So he's gonna have to wrestle. He's gonna, I think, probably have to put on some weight and maybe just focus heavily on wrestling. Yeah, I mean, maybe he could do it,
I feel
depending
like
on
you're
like
talking yourself into it a little right now.
yeah, depending on what the Vegas line is. Miocic is a guy that like I don't historically like to bet against because I think he is just so tough. Like
Yeah.
He's just game, and he still probably doesn't get the credit
Totally.
where
He
it's
doesn't.
due. But
Totally.
yeah,
There's one more name that I'm going to throw in the mix, and
I think
God
I know where
forgive
this
us
is going.
for leaving the name out of this so long, but John Bones Jones. I think if you want, I think it might come off as a super fight. I think it could be one of the best fights we've seen in a long time, or I think it has a little bit of flop potential. I mean, Jones, maybe he needs a fresh coat of paint, and he wasn't looking so good at the end of his run at light heavyweight, him just giving up that belt. But he hasn't gotten younger. He hasn't fought, and I mean, we talk about ring rust, and it's going to be probably 2+ years for the time he actually gets back into the octagon, and when this fight would potentially take place. Talking about wanting money, all these things like that. Um, what do you think happens if these two fictional characters were to get into the ring together?
Oh my gosh! If I was a billionaire and there's anything I could make happen in this world, that would be my dream fight. Jones at heavyweight, which we've wanted for years because he was so big and so dominant at
Yep.
light heavyweight. Maybe like has the game caught up to him? I think that's definitely possible, right?
Yep.
I think, but I think it's also equally as likely that Jones just historically just he's just a savage. Like he needs to like I think feel scared and needs to like be able to get up for a fight to show up. And I think his last couple of fights against Reyes, against Anthony Smith, against all these guys, they weren't. There wasn't a lot of hype around the fights.
Thiago Santos too. Yep. Yep.
Yeah,
That was the
Santos
other one.
too, and but I think back to when he fought Gus the second time. That wasn't that long ago. That was
No.
What 2019, 2018.
Around there, yeah.
Yeah, and you look at like when Gus was coming into that fight, he had just destroyed Glover Teixeira, and we've seen what Glover's done since that fight. He's beaten basically everyone.
Yep.
Gus looked amazing, and I think Bones Jones remembered like how their first fight went, and he just came out, took him down, held him down, and finished him pretty easily.
Yeah.
And so that to me gives me that sort of hope that he needs a big fight with a lot of eyeballs and like a new challenge for him to show up as like the old John Jones. And if he does, man, oh man, like I think Francis is still the favorite, but you have to love that fight.
And I just love talking about it because there's such a strong argument for it going, even Jones himself performing either way. Everything you just said there makes you think Jones can do anything, and he's proven through his career that he can do anything. But again, you also have the ring rust, him adding all that weight on, and even if it seems like it's going on kind of naturally, like being in an athletic family with two of his brothers in the NFL being much larger guys,
Yeah.
even him training, trying to get used to that speed, you don't get that speed until you're really fighting. And your test run at this new weight is against, as we're saying, the Mike Tyson of the UFC right now.
Yeah.
It would take one shot to potentially on that night, and we don't see John take many shots at all through any of his fights. But there's so many angles to take on it, and
Yeah.
it's the most fun fight you can think of to talk about. So, I mean, at earliest, let's just play matchmaker and let's keep a time on in mind here. Let's say Francis and winner of this fight coming up this weekend fight in December. Let's say Stipe gets him after, and that's next April. So the earliest, if John is really holding out for a title shot, and they were still to give it to him against Francis, that would come what, April, May, June, July, or August of 2022. I almost, to your point earlier about needing kind of some identity with the division, I never know if it's a good or a bad thing to have these type of timelines played out. I don't think it necessarily hurts here because these are all big names. They're legends with these heavier divisions in the sport. But you also want to be surprised sometimes too, and maybe we will be. Maybe everything we're talking about is completely off and doesn't happen. And some rising star comes out of nowhere and is knocking out just as many people as Francis. Or maybe it plays out this way and we're still going to get surprised with results one way or another.
Yeah, yeah. In that case, like, what do you do? Do you give John another fight at heavyweight? Does it lose the appeal of him?
He's
Sitting out.
allegedly turned them down too. Like he was offered Stipe from what I heard, and said belt or nothing because I would love to see that fight too.
Yeah, yeah. That's been a fight for many years too. That I would just love to see happen. I think the other thing too, though, that we're forgetting. I mentioned his name earlier. Jan's making the case to be like one of maybe not Jones's level, but extremely dominant as a light heavyweight champion. So I'll be
Yeah,
curious to see how that plays out as well. He's a big guy. Does he move up to fight Francis? I mean, probably not. Why would he?
yeah,
But yeah, I think with John, if it doesn't happen in the next 6 months, I think that window is going to be closing. But
yeah.
I,
I
I
mean, if I
so
were him, I would get worried. I would say I want to get the rust off. I want to get a trial run at this weight, and yeah, I don't want Francis to be the first time I try this out.
yeah, yeah. And I mean,
Unforgiving.
I think it's long been said that Jones did well against heavyweights in training. I think he dominated everyone. But
He's John Jones.
yeah, yeah, I'd just be so curious to see how this goes. The matchups. I think that's the biggest fight to make, and if you can make it ASAP, like if this Gane versus Lewis fight doesn't lead to anything exciting, if I'm Dana White, I'm reaching into the checkbook and I'm making this happen. I really think that if paying John Jones, it could be worth it. This could just be such a gigantic fight.
Yeah. Well, let's keep our fingers crossed that there's some delivery, but also some surprise here too. And we will tune back in next week to recap whatever we end up seeing here with UFC 265.